Fire. If Vietnam joins the United States, waging war on our country again, can our country be like the last century? Beat the opponent again. How big is the difference between the two sides' combat strength now? This is a question posed by netizens. Actually, if there is another self-defense counterattack against the moon, our country will be better than it was then. The outcome of the war, absolutely beyond everyone's imagination. The Vietnam War of the last century. Even at a staggering $250 billion in military spending, and $360,000 the cost of American casualties, the Americans still haven't gotten anything out of it. Bite the bullet. 10 years later, you can only clip your tail and retreat gloomily. The American defeat in the Vietnam War let the Vietnamese leadership and their troops. Ambition is highly inflated. Start talking about yourself. Become the third largest military power in the world. And what's unbelievable is, its border troops actually began to frequent harassment and agility. Border zone. He doesn't hide his ambition at all. And what's even more unacceptable is Le Phang's goal. It is our country that has provided a lot of aid to it. You know, they can beat France. American invaders. It is inseparable from our full help. Now turn the tables on our country. It's shameful. For the sake of those with bad intentions, show our country's determination to defend against foreign enemies. Our army launched a self-defense counterattack against the moon in 1979. And in less than a month, completely crushed the Vietnamese army with the advantage of overwhelming momentum. Knock it down and go back 20 years. However, all this, but keep cheating? Changwon's old beauty saw an opportunity. They suddenly discovered arrogance and domineering. Do things without considering the consequences? Just in time to become its leader in Asia. Expansion of terrain hegemony. A wife who holds back the development of our country. In fact, the US military intervened in the Vietnam War. Invest a lot of money to maintain the authenticity of the war. The target is also our country. It's just that the old Maggie at that time was one move away. Unsuccessful. Now they see an opportunity again. With Yu Fang in front of him? Of course, the United States does not need to send troops to be suspected. To support the Vietnamese army. That's it. Old America began to have frequent contact with music and international affairs. At the latest US ACE. Each month, both parties will. Its intentions are exposed at a glance. Long before the summit, there has been close contact between the top management of the two sides every month. The leaders of the two sides even directly unfolded. Hours of talks. As soon as you come up, Old Beauty is like Yu Fang throwing an olive branch. Claims to provide a large amount of military assistance to the Moon Army. The degree of generosity. Even Yu Fang couldn't figure it out for a while. But, close behind, the Old Beauty revealed her true intentions. Conditions for the provision of military assistance is to be in Vietnam, building a US military base. In this conversation, the Old Beauty speaks wildly, declares that our country has become a threat to the world. However, Vietnam relies on its advantageous geographical location. Will be an important part of stopping our country. They built a military base out of pure righteousness. This confused statement made people laugh out loud. However, the senior management of Le Phang, he did not accept the Old Beauty's conditions on the spot. He said he was going home. Make a decision after careful consideration? The allure of military aid to Dobby on the happy side. He did not agree to Lo Mei's conditions on the spot. And it's easy to see why. Naturally, he was afraid of being punished again. Beatings from our side. After all, in the last century, they provoked us 3 or 4 times. As a result, our army used a war. Let the Le Phang who jumps up and down be on us directly. Can't jump anymore. Never dare to provoke our country. And this is the self-defense counterattack against the moon. If Vietnam joins the United States, waging war on our country again, can our country be like the last century? Beat the opponent again? What is the reason for the other party to provoke our country again? In order to achieve their ambitions. The Old Beauty is eyeing the music that is also unwilling to keep its own peace. Fang intends to draw him into his own ashes. And the main target is naturally our country. The United States offers military assistance as a condition, required to build a military base in Yu. But Yu Fang naturally did not dare to agree on the spot. The matter was put on hold for the time being. Except for the moon, the United States is also actively in close contact with ASEAN countries, trying to find a breakthrough in this. For the development of our country, extend your hands to Asia. Interference in regional affairs. Disrupt the peaceful and stable geopolitical environment of other countries. the active engagement of Laos and the United States with Peru and ASEAN countries. Nature caused an uproar in the international community, and our country is also paying close attention to it. After all, the United States and Vietnam are two countries, has the potential to manipulate our country throughout history. So let's start with this. Naturally, he's always thinking about the old beauty aimed at our country. Actually, old America by supporting a proxy state, so as to control the area, in order to overwhelm the legitimate rights and interests of other countries. Already a customary measure. The Korean War broke out in the 1950s. It was America who wrote from it, caused by the vain attempt to radiate all of Asia from the Korean Peninsula. For a corner of the transverse difference, Lao Mission, shameless under the banner of the United Nations Army, launched the famous ancient landing, entered the Korean battlefield brazenly. Originally made great progress all the way. Propulsion speed is overwhelming. Even about to take the Korean army. The Korean People's Army, all driven into the sea. It was completely disrupted by the sudden attack of Lao Mei. Retreat all the way to the Yalu River. No resistance. So far, the intentions of the old beauty have been very obvious. Just under the guise of the original Korean army. Trying to spread the war to our country. Even directly launched the July War. At that time, the US military even. Shameless dispatch of bomber formations. Bombing northeast of our country. For the lives of the people, property security poses a serious threat. Greatly disrupted the normal life of the local area. Production order, and our country made a decision. Launched the Great War to resist US aggression and aid Korea. Pushed the Americans back to the 38th parallel. Smashed the expansion ambitions of the old beauty. For our country, won a peaceful and stable development environment for decades. Looking back at the beginning and end of the Korean War, and the role of the old beauty in it. Purpose to be achieved. It is not difficult to see. This is related to China and the United States. The hidden crises of the three kingdoms are very similar. Lafang is like Korea. Is the regional agent selected by Lao Mei. Helping the Vietnamese army develop is just a cover and an excuse. The so-called maintenance of regional peace and stability. It's a big joke. The discerning eye can see. Old America is the destroyer of the world order. They want to manipulate the Lifang chess piece. Early war against our country. If you let it succeed, the old beauty on the other side of the ocean can enjoy the success. Destroy the peace around our country, stable development environment, effectively hinder the development momentum of our country. It can also fight backwards, make a big fuss about it, pointing fingers at our country's strategic measures. But that's not the most important part. You know, our country hasn't been at war for decades. This has kept Lao Mei confused. How far has our army developed? Global military experts often say, there must be a war between the two countries. Lao Mei obviously has plans in this regard, to force our country into a war. Find out the details of our army in advance. Then if you really join forces with us every month, what will happen if you start a war? What are the implications? If Vietnam joins the United States, waging war on our country again, can our country be like the last century? Beat the opponent again? What is the reason for the other party to provoke our country again? Old America in recent years. Frequent cooperation with ASEAN, including Vietnam. Dealing with countries, any discerning person can see that hidden Mars. It's just the same old story of geopolitical expansion. Through support agents, manipulate Lafang's wife to start war, disrupt the peaceful and stable development environment of our country, curb the speed of our country's development. In addition to that, Lao Mei can still take this opportunity. How far has our army developed? Prepare for a possible future war. It's wily. So, if war does break out, what's the result? What are the implications? But first we need to be very clear. That is, even if the old beauty does succeed, provoked a war between China and Vietnam, they don't necessarily end up going to war themselves. In fact, after the Korean War, the Americans have never dared to enter the battlefield again, go head-to-head with our army. It can be seen that the combat effectiveness of our army is powerful. Even the mighty US military has to retreat. This is not groundless. During the Vietnam War, in order to maintain peace and stability in the border area, issue a solemn statement to the US military, forbid it to advance the front north of 17 degrees north latitude. Otherwise, our army will surely take countermeasures. What surprised the world was an arrogant and domineering old beauty. He obediently complied with the requirements of our army. Even if the war is lost, descend in despair, never set foot in the area north of 17 degrees north latitude. The same morning, we have issued a statement to the US military during the Korean War. But they didn't believe in evil at that time. You have to cross the 38th parallel, The result was a severe beating, eating during the Vietnam War. The old beauty who has learned a lesson naturally dare not do it again. This shows that, even if Lao Mei really takes China and Vietnam, the war between, I don't dare to fight in person. The equipment for resisting US aggression and assisting North Korea is inferior. Logistics are far inferior to the volunteer armies of Western powers. It can still bring back the great defeat of the US military. After decades of development, the military, how powerful is it? Lao Mei doesn't dare to try it herself. Then the so-called monthly collaboration? There's only one possibility. That is, the US military provides weapons and equipment support. The Vietnamese are in charge. This situation seems familiar. That was the self-defense counterattack against the moon that broke out in 1979. Only, it wasn't Lao Mei who stood behind the moon at that time. It was the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union and the United States are also military superpowers. During the Sino-Vietnamese War, assistance for Li Fang, it's enormous. The old beauty can't compare it all. The first is that the amount is as high as 1.92 billion US dollars. Direct financial assistance from the government, and minerals worth $700 million. Grain and oil and other material assistance. The scope of assistance includes electricity, metallurgical mining, chemistry, and other aspects. Directly over. Fang's comprehensive strength has been raised several steps. In addition to that, the Soviet Union also specifically provided up to $2 billion for special projects dedicated to supporting the Vietnamese military. And for the Vietnamese army, nearly 8,000 military advisors were provided, except for potential accidents. RIG-23 frigate, SC air defense missile, T-series tanks have everything. The Soviets even used satellites, providing information support to the Vietnamese army. So much force, just to support Vietnam in winning the Sino-Vietnamese War. So how did the Vietnamese army end up? It's only been a month. Our army is divided into east and west lines, in a full-scale crushing situation, all the way to the front of Hanoi, the capital of Yufeng. Be rude. As long as our army wants, Yufeng is facing fire suppression at any time. Decades. Time has passed. The disparity in military strength between China and Vietnam. The gap is already indescribable. Whether it is technological level or understanding, the two parties are not on the same level at all. Let's not talk about whether the old beauty is willing to spend money. Provide the same strong support for the monthly party. Even if it is provided, the monthly average has no chance of winning. This is the consensus of military experts around the world. As for the old US wanting to start a war by joining forces every month to test the strength of our army, it's ridiculous. They may have forgotten the self-defense counterattack against the moon. The troops dispatched by our army, even half of the total is far from enough. Complete adult beats child. Such a disparity. How can you see the true strength